Okay, hey, I want to go ahead and start. I'm going to do the discussion board questions. I was going through them, everything looks good so far. I just want to point out a couple of things where people are kind of still not getting correct. As far as the discouraged workers are not included in not US GDP. Discouraged workers are not actually included in when you calculate the unemployment rate, all right? They are included, well, they're not included in the published one, U3, they are included in what we call U6. So in the information I gave earlier in the chapter, it talked about U3, U4, U5, U6, had the link there, you can go through and look at the different types of unemployment. So if I have an economy, it has 10 people are employed and 90 who are, 90 who are employed and 10 who are not employed. That means my 10 is gonna equal U, my 90 is gonna equal E. The way U3 is calculated is it's E plus U over the labor force. And labor force is just a fancy way to say E plus U. So I'm going to have 10 over 10 plus 9, which is the same thing as 10 over 100. When I divide that, I end up with 10%. So the unemployment rate is 100 in the beginning. You can't see my screen. All right. Make sure. Let me go to. And it end up with a 10% unemployment rate. Well, the problem says what happens. Am I recording? Yep. All right. What happens when you have one person who drops out of the labor force? All right. So if I have somebody who drops out of the labor force, we're going to end up having someone here drop out. That's going to become a 9. Most people will change the numerator, they'll forget to change the denominator. Make sure you change the denominator. So that means I end up with 9 over 99, not necessarily 100, right? And when I do that, I end up with 9.09%. And so what I have here is because of the discouraged worker, because someone got tired of looking, right? They finally gave up and said they weren't gonna look anymore. The unemployment rate fell from 10% to 9.09%. And so that's why a lot of people have issues with the unemployment rate, the way it is reported. Want to say, okay, I want to compare this present to that. Make note, they do include discouraged workers in part of the unemployment when they look at U6. So if you are comparing presidents, right? Compare presidents in the sense of U3 to U3 to U3. Don't necessarily look at one president's U3, which doesn't include discouraged workers, and the other one, president's U6, which does. All right, next problem. Suppose I've got 140 people who are employed. All right, 140,000 people are employed. So I've got 140 is equal to my E. I'm just gonna leave off the 100,000. I have 15,000 who are unemployed, right? 15 who are U. And then it tells me, and I have 50,000 people out of the labor force. Make sure you understand what out of the labor force means, not in labor force, all right? And then it's asking me to calculate my labor force participation rate. All right, well here, these 50,000 are not in the labor force. This E plus U is the labor force. So I can add my labor force plus not in the labor force, all right? If I add that, that's gonna give me my population. Sometimes the problem will tell you the population. Sometimes it'll be very specific and tell you it is non-military civilian population over the age of 16. Sometimes it'll just say population over 16 or working population. Any of those will do. So if I add here, what did I have? My labor force, 140 plus 15 tells me my labor force is equal to 155. All right, and I have my non-in labor force, the 50. That means I'm going to have my population is going to be 155 over 205. So 155 includes those who work and those who do not work and are actively looking. 205 includes people who are not in the labor force, which could be your discouraged workers. It could be your stay-at-home moms. It could be your students. It could be your retirees, anyone who is not actively looking. And when I take that percentage, I end up with 155 divided by 205. It's going to give me a 75.61%. A lot of you asked me about that. Whenever you get, as far as rounding is concerned, generally speaking in econ or in stats, if they give it to you as a whole number, try to go out 2 decimal places below that. behind that, all right? So I would go to the 10th place. If they had given it to me in the 1st place, I would have gone out to the 100th place, all right? On the exam, I'll be looking for 76.61. If you're lucky, maybe I will just put 77%, all right? But just so you know, when you see a 76.61, that's where it comes from. I'm not a stickler for that because this isn't a math class. All right. Number 3, suppose I have 140 people are employed and 15 are unemployed. Shouldn't erase that. So I have 140 is going to be my E. I have 15, which is my U. And then the problem tells me that the working age population is 250. All right, so now my pop is greater than 250. And 50,000 are not in the labor force, all right? 50,000 are what we consider not in labor force, right? When it asks me to calculate my unemployment rate, make sure your unemployment rate, just little u, is always going to be equal to big U over big U plus E. You do not need this information to calculate the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate has a U, and an E in it, right? That's all you need. You can get rid of that as well, right? Some of you are trying to subtract out and find out what your unemployment rate is. Formula is U over U plus E. So when I take my 15U over my 15,155, I find out that in this economy, or this country, I have 15 divided by 155. I'm going to end up with 9.67. Yeah, 9.67%. 9.67% unemployment. All right, number 4. Describe the 3 types of unemployment and give an example of each. A lot of you wanted to include seasonal employment. You can. I just didn't. The book does talk about it, and that's just simply because what the government does is they know every single year there are going to be lifeguards who can't find work, or there are going to be ski instructors who can't give ski instructions. So they automatically adjust for those. But what they also have taken into consideration, and let me go ahead and pull this up. Looking at the last one, the natural rate of unemployment. So let me tie in number 4 and number 5. The natural rate of unemployment is what we consider our frictional plus our structural unemployment. Frictional would be, think of it like job matching. Somebody's looking for a job and they have to find the right job. It does not mean that I cannot find the right job, I just have to match with it. I have the right skill set for it. Think of frictional as being musical chairs. I'm just looking for the right job. Structural, on the other hand, means that there has been some sort of business change. That chair has left the room. That chair is no longer good. Hotels now are no longer needing you to check in. You can check in with your phone. And so if I no longer have to go to the front desk, then I think of that, if I used to be someone who worked at a hotel, my job has been eliminated. I like to use the toll booth operators in class. If I'm a toll booth operator, no matter how much I want to be a toll booth operator, I've now been replaced by EasyTag. Right? And if I've been replaced by EasyTag, there is a skill matching set, right? I cannot get another job with that skill set, so I'll have to go back to school. So that's a structural. Cyclical, on the other hand, and so this is where I want to come back to. If I did a time series, and time series is just a graph and has numbers on the bottom, right, years. Let's say I'm going to go 1950, and if you don't mind, you can go back into the module that I made, and at the very top, I've included a chart there. If you kind of look over the chart up until now, the unemployment rate is all over here, right? It looks something like this. And so what we're saying with the natural rate of unemployment is we will never get down to 0% unemployment. This is the unemployment rate, right? Because there's always going to be someone who's going to be either frictionally or structurally unemployed. There's always going to be somebody who's going to be becoming 18. There's always going to be somebody who's going to change jobs and move to another area. There's always going to be a student who's going to graduate. So in order to account for that, the government says it's acceptable to have some amount of unemployment, what we call our natural rate. That sort of relates back to our production possibility frontier curve that we studied before, when I had good X and good Y. We said you wanted to be efficient. You wanted to be on the PPF curve. Anything inside is inefficient. So this curve is what we would call full employment, meaning everyone who wants to work and is looking for a job and who's not structurally or frictionally unemployed is actually working. So this natural rate of unemployment is sort of like this. And that's important to you because later on when we go into module 3, we're going to talk about something called the long run aggregate supply curve. And just to give you a little graph like this. At some point we're going to be talking about real GDP. We're going to graph real GDP and the price level, which you should know what those two are by now, at least real GDP. And this is going to be our long run aggregate supply curve, right? Think of that as our PPF. What it's saying is our natural rate of unemployment is equal to structural unemployment plus frictional. Right? And generally in the United States, let's say structural is 2 and frictional is 2. All right, or somewhere in between 1 and 2. So we'll say our natural rate of unemployment in the United States is somewhere between, let's say 4 and 6%. Right? Somewhere in there. That means there's a band here. If I were to draw a line here and a line here, with this being 4 and this being 6, we would say that any unemployment in here is probably due to structural and frictional, and not going to be an issue where it's acceptable. However, this point right here is a problem, right? And that point up there is going to be related to cyclical unemployment. And the book says cyclical unemployment is any unemployment related to a recession. And we haven't really covered recessions yet. We're starting to go over gross domestic product. But remember, a recession is just 2 consecutive quarters where real GDP is actually falling. So again, your natural rate of employment is your structural plus frictional, and your cyclical unemployment would be this portion here. So let me give you an example. If this point happened to be 12, and this piece here is 6, if I asked you, said actual employment is 12, structural is 2, frictional is 2, what is the cyclical unemployment? You're going to take 12 minus 6 to be 6. We would say there's 6% cyclical unemployment.